I love like video games to the point where like I don't care what they make. I just want to
Yeah.
see like a movie of it.
Yeah, I can see that. I would say maybe I'm not always like I loved it, but
Mhm.
I feel like I'm a lot less critical of it than other people are. Like I've definitely seen movies and I've like posted like, "Man, I really thought that was fun."
Yeah.
And people are like, "That sucked. What are you
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about?" So it kind of What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Red Essence Games podcast. I'm Nick.
I'm Armand.
And today we are going to be discussing something kind of fun because the Fallout show just came out relatively recently. Armand's starting to watch it. Me and my wife just finished watching it recently. And we're going to talk about video game adaptations today and whether or not we think they're good in general.
Mhm.
And I guess what makes a good video game adaptation.
And what games we might want to see
Yes.
as an adaptation
Yes.
potentially that kind of could be out there.
Yep.
Like could terribly fail as an adaptation, but we'd still maybe want to see it anyway.
Yeah, I feel like either way, as hardcore gamers, we want to see everything that's out. But if you've never joined us before, we are lifelong gamers as well as game developers, and we are currently working on a game called Traveler's Refrain, which you can wishlist now on Steam. And if you haven't heard of Traveler's Refrain, it's a game about a wandering musician who travels to a forbidden forest in search of his long lost love. And if you're into kind of like old school top-down video games, top-down RPGs, action RPGs, with a modern flair, check out Traveler's Refrain. I think you'll kind of dig it. So
We have some hardcore mechanics.
yeah, definitely. So yeah, go check that out, and let's kind of just get into it. So in general, what do you think about video game adaptations in terms of I guess we're talking about movies and shows, and let's be exclusive. Like, let's not dive too much into like anime, because I know like Dragon Ball Z, Yu-Gi-Oh, Naruto, they all have like video games, but
Mhm.
that's kind of a different genre. So we're strictly talking about like video game character adaptations.
Right, so something that started as a video game.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I would personally love to see every game I grew up with have a video game.
Really?
adaptation. Yeah.
Oh man.
I just want to see it, like just for the culture. Like I just want to see what it looks like.
Okay.
You know, I have wondered about it from time to time what it might look like as an adaptation. And
Yeah.
when I hear about games that come out and they have adaptations, I get really excited because I'm like, I waited so long for the Sonic movie,
Yeah.
the Mario movie. But yeah, and then you also have your difference between live action and non-live action. So,
Yeah. That's one we
because that
can.
changes things a lot.
I think so too,
opinion.
especially with the really like mascot-y kind of characters like
Yeah.
Mario and Sonic.
I'm the kind of guy that like a game adaptation will come out and everyone will hate it, and I'll be like, oh my god, I loved it.
Honestly, okay,
Because
so
I'm just so like I love like video games to the point where like I don't care what they make. I just want to
Yeah.
see like a movie of it.
yeah, I can see that. I would say maybe I'm not always like I loved it, but I feel like I'm a lot less critical of it than other people are. Like I've definitely seen movies and I've like posted like, "Man, I really thought that was fun."
Yeah.
And people are like, "That sucked. What are you
Yeah,
talking about?"
yeah.
So it kind of depends on the movie and the game exactly, but I don't know. I think we're both a little bit more lenient, which I think
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like, come on, guys, like it's video game movies. Let's just let it be fun, like
Also, it's a very. I mean, if you stick too close to the material, source material,
yeah.
it could get kind of samey, and
Sure.
people might be a little more bored, especially if they're not into the series.
Yeah.
So I can understand why people deviate, directors and writers deviate a little bit, but not too much. I think I think as long as if
Well-
I watch it and I'm like, oh, I know what that is. Like I see a little reference to something in the game,
Sure.
and I'm like, I know what that is.
But-
That's good for me.
But that's what's very interesting about this in general, because with a video game, right, the player has full agency over the character, and there's usually an objective to the video game, and it's not always story related. It could be like collect the thing or do the mission or fight the boss or whatever. And a lot of times with movies, what you're trying to hit on more than anything is character development, as opposed to like all of the like other stuff that you play in video games. So that's what gets kind of weird sometimes with these adaptations. And going into what you were saying in terms of live action versus like 3D, I still haven't seen the Sonic movie, guys, and let me know in the comments if you think I should watch it. But Armand has seen it. What
So
did you think about
the first two? Yeah.
the first two? I haven't seen any of them yet. I want to see them. I'm not opposed to seeing them, but it's just
Mhm.
I just haven't gotten around to it. What do you think about the fact that Sonic is like hanging out with like real people?
Real people.
Yeah.
I think it's like part of the lore, right? He's like kind of part of the real world. I mean, Eggman's
In the
there.
show. Yeah,
No,
but
even in the games, like he's just in
yeah,
the
but
world with
Eggman's
the
like
humans.
a weird, like exaggerated dude with like a giant mustache, like out to here.
I know,
you
but
know?
even in the movie though, he's from another universe and he gets
Yeah.
transported into like the human world,
Mhm.
which, that's fine, I guess. But I thought overall, like, I don't know, I just wanted to see more of that like Sonic versus Eggman type of thing. And it took a little bit of time to build, and they did a cool job with the robots and things like that. I love Jim Carrey, by the way. I really wish that they gave Jim Carrey better lines.
Okay.
I know he's a phenomenal actor. Like maybe he could have played Eggman better, but I almost think that like the material, maybe the writing just wasn't my favorite, honestly. And yeah, I think it focused too much on like the dilemmas of the humans.
Oh.
Because he joins their planet and they're
I
having
see.
their own dilemmas, and he's kind of like a part of that, as opposed to it just being like
Sonic is the main hero.
right,
Yeah.
like they're. So I guess they try to make it more relatable,
Sure.
but
They kind of did that with Detective Pikachu too, right? It's like I don't even remember the character's name, but it was more about his problems, and then Pikachu was kind of helping him discover
yeah, can't stand Ryan Reynolds.
Spoilers.
Sorry.
Spoilers, but wasn't Pikachu like his dad at the end of the movie? Or
Oh god.
what was it? Right?
I think so. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Wasn't
yeah,
it like he got transported into Pikachu?
yeah.
Something weird like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I think you're
It's
right,
like
yeah.
once we were like thinking about this, like after having seen this for years, it's like, man, that was freaking weird that they decided to do that.
I loved watching the Pokemon movie because
Yeah.
I've been waiting so long for it, and
I know.
I thought that this was so cool. They had like Mewtwo and like all the OGs in there, and it was fun to watch. It was a pleasure to watch. The whole like talking Pikachu thing was kind of whack, but
As far as
like
I know,
said,
though,
I'm not a fan of Ryan Reynolds either. So if
Sure.
it could have been somebody else, like
But as
maybe
far as
didn't.
I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the Detective Pikachu game he talked as well, so that's kind of where they made that weird parallel. But I never played that. So
Detective Pikachu.
yeah, it was a 3DS or it was a DS game,
Oh, okay.
I think, or 3DS.
Not Hey You Pikachu.
No, not Hey You Pikachu. It was it was actually
Pikachu, make me food.
But yeah, I think what happens a lot of these times too is the producer, whoever's behind the curtain, right? They get these scripts and they're like, no, that's not going to work for the general audience.
Yeah.
We got to make it more relatable to everybody. So we're going to put in all these things that we think are going to be relatable. But then the only people that are really watching it are like gamers and then, their family, let's call it. And then they're sitting there being like, this is not Pokemon
But
or whatever.
yeah,
Or, this is not Sonic.
it takes time to build like you gotta it's hard to like make a hybrid of the two because you gotta focus on one or the other, really. I mean, if you really want to get that deep into it, like you either have to focus on the humans and their problems or you focus on the Pokemon and the world and stuff. And I thought they did a decent job of kind of mixing them in the movie. But at the end of the day, you give up so much movie screen time to like humans and their problems. Like I liked how in the beginning the guy was like, the main character is like, oh, I want to become the greatest trainer and go to this tournament or competition or whatever. Totally fine. I mean, that's literally Pokemon. It's to like become the champion, right? So I thought that was okay. But then it got all goofy with like the the Pikachu, and I honestly forget the plot of the movie. It was just so mediocre.
I know,
but,
me too, honestly. I think that's another thing to maybe just discuss in general is for the most part, I would say that a lot of these video game adaptations have been kind of not super memorable.
right.
It's only certain ones that have kind of stood out to me. And what's actually interesting is I feel when the studio is more hardcore a part of the production, it yields a more interesting movie. And it feels like it's, let's just call it the past decade or so, that has been more of a thing. I mean, we know, I think Resident Evil, let's say, is probably the biggest trend to begin the video game franchise thing, and like they kind of went just nuts with that franchise. I actually kind of like those movies, but they deviated a lot. But what I want to bring it back to is, for example, as far as I know, the Assassin's Creed live action movie, Ubisoft was more of a role, had more of a role in the production of that. And what was cool about that movie, I thought, I know people hated that movie for whatever reason. I thought it was cool.
I thought it was really cool.
But I remember playing
Michael Fassbender.
Yeah, he's really cool.
He's so good.
I agree, man.
He's one of my favorite actors. So
I like him too, man.
I'm like, yo, he can do whatever he wants.
I agree, man.
Give the man a hood and some daggers. Throw him in there.
Can do no wrong.
Yeah.
But I remember playing the following game that came out after that movie, and you read through the Animus files or whatever in the present day, and it referred back to the movie. So I thought that was kind of cool. It was like, they're like, all right, we want to make a movie. We want to get people interested in this franchise. But they then actually connected it to the overarching universe. And it's like, I know not every single video game movie can do something like that, but just decisions in general can yield different types of products. And sometimes it's like you're just sitting there, you're like, what the heck are these people thinking, you know? So maybe now that you're watching Fallout, let's talk about that for a bit. Do you have much experience with Fallout?
I have no experience with Fallout. Well, I have very little, because I think I played it for like a couple minutes, because I remember you could like pick where you shoot like the enemies and stuff.
Yeah, the VATS system. VATS or something.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember that because I think somebody handed me a controller and I played for like a couple minutes, and I remember
you probably played Fallout 3.
Fallout 3 maybe, yeah. And I remember that specifically. That was really like one of the things that stuck out to me. And at the moment I thought, why do you have to pick where you shoot it? Like, why can't you just like try to shoot it? And that's kind of like my thought process, but maybe you can tell me otherwise. You asked me about how I thought about the show though, right?
Well, before that though, have you played Elder Scrolls or any of the other Bethesda games?
I have, yeah. I played Oblivion and I played a little bit of Skyrim.
Okay, so if you've played those games, I think you at least have a general sense of like the gist of the types of games. So what do you think of the show, like with that kind of background? You're not that far into it, by the way, also.
I'm only like an episode and a half.
Okay.
But I was telling Amanda this. I was like, I see something in the show and I'm like, that's definitely from the video game.
Yeah.
Like the little needles that they use.
Yeah. The stim packs or whatever. Yeah.
Those are, I was like, okay, that's from the game. And obviously the suits are from the game. And then the monsters, they're like mutated, are from the game. And then I see the boy with the thumb.
Boy with the thumb.
The little kid that's plastered everywhere. Pip Boy,
right? I think
Pip Boy or Pip Boy. Yeah. He's everywhere, and I mean that's like the literally the logo,
the mascot or whatever.
Mascot of Fallout. Yeah. So that's everywhere. And I assume the guns, like the little dark gun, is probably from the game right too. So I don't know. I see things and I'm like, okay, that looks very video gamey, but it's very well disguised in the show.
Yeah.
Where like all this other stuff is going on that's keeping you like entertained.
Sure.
And all this extra stuff is in the background that you can like kind of pick out and notice.
Yeah.
So
I think that's kind of so I finished the first season like a couple days ago, and I think that's kind of the beauty of this show in particular is like Grace, obviously my wife, like has no affiliation to Fallout whatsoever, but she thought it was interesting. So for a newcomer, like they can watch a show like this and be like, whoa, that was pretty cool. But then people that are gamers like can pick out these specific things that they did, and it's like the fan service thing to a certain extent, but it does like give that extra little level. And I think what's actually interesting about some of these newer video game show movie adaptations is there's mechanics in the video game, right, that they then can use to implement into the show. So what I started to kind of subconsciously notice about the show, and I want you to watch out for this as you're continuing to watch it, but I noticed that the characters keep coming across these very obvious moral dilemmas, and that's kind of what these like RPGs are like, right? The character's like, I don't even want to give an example off the top of my head, but it's like they give you a quest and they're like, find the cat or like, let the cat die or something like that. And it's like,
yeah, they do that in the first episode where the witch, she's just like, your daughter or all these people.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a great example. So it's like, it's like this very obvious moral conundrum. And it's like, you could see if the character goes in one direction, it could take the plot in a totally different direction. And I think that's honestly what draws people to these games in the first place. So for me, it was really cool to see that they pushed that real hard. And it's like a recurring theme throughout the entire show. Whereas other shows, like I was kind of saying before, movies, it's like some executive producer in Hollywood gets the script and they're like, nah, we're gonna like do whatever we think is good for the general population. So that's been really cool to see. So maybe what could be kind of fun is kind of like speculating a couple game series that we think would make actually good. So, okay, let me just say really quick, too. So you were like, you're like, any game that's made, I'm going to go see the movie just because I love games. I feel a little bit torn about that because I feel like they can butcher it for everyone else sometimes. There's opportunities where it's like, let's say I'm really into God of War, and then they make a God of War show, and I show Grace, and she's like, that like is not interesting at all just because the execution was terrible. Sometimes it can almost like ruin it for everybody, but the source material is like amazing.
I don't even think it matters at that point because at that point it's like they're either gonna play it or they either have played it and they're a gamer or they're just not gonna play it.
But
or it could get them into it.
But the other thing though I will say is like there's been examples where there's games that are already like movies that Grace has just kind of sat with me and just watched, like Kingdom Hearts. She actually watched me play The Last of Us 1 and 2. So even before we watched the show, The Last of Us, like she already saw the entire game because it kind of felt like a movie in itself.
Right. So
that's the question too. Like you guys saw The Last of Us show, right?
Yeah.
What did you think of that? Because it felt very similar to the game.
I didn't get super far in the game. I think I was playing on too hard of a difficulty.
You always do this, dude. You're like, I got a quarter way through because I was playing on super duper extra hard difficulty.
Dude, I need the challenge. Like, I just need the challenge.
But sometimes okay, this is a tangent, but I think sometimes the extra hard difficulty is meant for...
Dude, you're a gamer. You gotta play on hard.
Bro.
It's leave the normal mode for the noobs.
It's meant for people who have already played on normal difficulty, and then they're like, okay, I get how the game mechanics work. And then you replay in hard.
Nah. Okay, maybe there's some games, but it's like, come on, like, have some honor, Have some honor and play the game on hard.
Hey, at least I finish my video games.
Oh, do you? Or you
sometimes?
Yeah. Oh, hey, I mean, I gotta beat Persona on very hard.
Oh, dude, you're never gonna finish.
You're
never gonna see what happens to Morgana.
You know what happened in BioShock?
Yeah.
Infinite. I literally got to the last boss and I died like 10 times and I was just gave up.
Bro, the end of BioShock Infinite is the best part of BioShock Infinite.
I didn't see it.
No. Oh my. You gotta stop playing games on extra hard difficulty, dude.
Nah.
But anyway, what did you think of The Last of Us before we dive into our speculation?
I thought it was really good. I thought they did a great job of capturing the monsters and the fear. I mean, the show overall was really well casted, I thought. And they did such a good job with all the cinematography and everything. It was just and they did a really good job of, I didn't play through the entire game. I got to I got through like halfway of like the first season basically in the game, which is not that far, but I could see how they basically attached it to the game. And how they basically did that thing where they kill off the characters, and every episode's like new characters, new story. So I could feel that in the way that they made that. Um, I'm a big fan of. Here's the thing. I love horror, but I don't
Mm.
love watching horror. If that makes sense. I
You like the idea of horror, but
I
you
like
don't
the
like
idea.
experiencing.
Right. I think because I think horror is such a like a very difficult genre to get right.
Mm.
It's one of the most difficult in my opinion, and I feel like it has such a there's so much thought that goes into horror
Mm.
because you are literally coming at people's you know
Emotions.
the very like tip of the emotion or the
Yeah.
very back seated part of the
Yeah.
emotions that brings out fear. And I think I really appreciate that the art style like the art and the all the creative process that goes into horror stuff, even though I don't like watching it that much because
Sure.
I'm not good with like horror faces and stuff. It like gives me nightmares. But
Yeah.
I really I want to make a horror game at some point just for the fun of it.
Or at least add horror elements into the game could be cool.
Right. But yeah, going back to The Last of Us, I thought it was great. What did you think about it?
I really liked the show, and I think they executed it relatively perfectly, honestly. But it was just the fact, like I said, it's like the game in itself feels like a movie. It's like that's why Grace was willing to just sit and kind of watch it, because it's like there's so many cutscenes and everything is motion captured, so it's like kind of already watching people act anyway. So that's what feels weird about some of these decisions sometimes with these games that are already starting to feel like movies. So on our list, we have, for example, I brought up God of War earlier. And I know there's kind of rumors going around, and sometimes they confirm rumors, and then it's like it kind of falls through. But it's like, how could they make a God of War show or movie that's like any better than, or really any different than the game itself?
Yeah.
And I guess we're specifically talking about like God of War 2018 and Ragnarok.
Well, I think they would have to start with the original God of War, right? Like him against the gods of Olympus.
I
'Cause
don't
that's
know.
kind of like the origin of God of War.
It is, but it feels like what I don't know, man. Actually, that's a
Or they could do like something like that Star Wars did, where they do like the Ragnarok and then they go back in time and show like him against the gods.
That's I guess that could be kind of cool.
Could be kind of cool.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, yeah, they'd really have to just kind of build a monster is like the approach that they'd have to take. Maybe they showcase like a weak Kratos that's like basically bullied by these gods constantly, and he kind of finds like his purpose and something drives him to be, you know, kill all the gods for whatever purpose. He has like a little switch in his head or something. What was the reason for coming after the gods? Do you remember?
So I actually played all the God of Wars, and from what I remember, the gods essentially tricked him into doing something for them, and they tricked him into killing his own family.
Oh.
The reason he's white, like pale white, is because they're the ashes of his wife and daughter on his skin.
Wow.
It's like kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But this kind of gets explained like really quickly, like in the beginning cutscene, I believe, of the first game. So it is a really intense motivation that he has to seek revenge. And obviously those games I think could, it's almost, that's actually an interesting point, because in my mind I'm like, oh, everybody knows God of War with the Viking kind of mythology. They're going to just dive right into that. But if they did go back to the kind of like Greek mythology, that could be a cool place to start. This game's had a lot of cutscenes, but it was like PS2, you know, so it could be cool as a live action. But
yeah, they'd have to go ham on the cinematics though, because
that's a good point.
Him using the chains to like go up the monsters and stuff. Like I think it'd be pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think a lot of these shows are kind of, whether or not they do well or not, are kind of predicated on their budget, because some games need a higher budget to be able to sell the audience, obviously. And it feels like, I mean, at least a lot of the games that we're even thinking could be made into movies, like, would have to have these crazy budgets to begin with. So I don't know. It's just kind of crazy, man. It's crazy we live in a world that video games have kind of traversed this barrier to
I know.
being way more mainstream to begin with. But for example, even my cousins that moved to Houston, their little daughter, she sets up all of these like pillows and stuff, and she pretends like she's Mario in an obstacle course
Oh.
because she's like obsessed with the Mario movie.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a cool thing that
It's
these
a
new
future
movies,
gamer right there.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of cool. That's what these movies have brought to us, is like almost like a rejuvenation of some of these older franchises.
Yeah. Because we didn't have that as kids. You know, you and
Mm-mm.
I, we had anime,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, we didn't have like live action stuff like this, and you know, all the better. You know,
Yeah. I
so
mean, honestly, off the top of my head, what we had Resident Evil, the Resident Evil franchise
that was
with
kind of
Mila
later though. I'm talking
Jovovich.
about like kids.
Kids. Yeah, I mean, maybe we were in middle school or so when that
Mm.
came out, probably. We had Tomb Raider, that was
Tomb
around
Raider.
the same
I didn't see that
same
one, but I know
time,
you did.
with Angelina Jolie. And then we had a little bit later, there's a Silent Hill movie franchise. I think there was two of them.
Mortal Kombat.
I never saw those.
Yeah.
Those were like really old though, right? Those may
Mm,
have been even earlier than the Resident Evil movies.
yeah, they were. I think
Right?
they were in the
Like early
early
90s.
'90s. I think. Yeah.
I never saw. Did you see those old ones?
I love the. I mean, the first Mortal Kombat movie was just. It's such a classic.
Yeah, but it's like a cheese fest, right?
Uh,
It's
To
cheesy,
an
dude.
extent.
Come on.
yeah. I mean, it is what it is. It's
Yeah.
literally none of it makes sense. But
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's they did a good job casting it, and I think with those you just have to get into it and
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
you know absorb it for what it is because obviously like spirit draining sorcerers are not
Yeah, real.
not real. So you just dive in and you enjoy the universe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then at that point, you think about if the writing is good or not.
Well, that's a good question for you because I know you've seen the more recent Mortal Kombat. Do you feel like it kind of matured in a way, like in terms of like storytelling, or is it just still kind of like
I mean,
let's fight each other and blow each other's spines up?
I love the new one too. I'm just a big Mortal Kombat fan. I love the new one. It's not. I mean, it's never gonna beat the old one, but I like the fresh take on a lot of the things. I was kind of hoping that Liu Kang would have like maybe a bigger role because he's like kind of like the main character in the original. They added a new character, Cole Young, who's he's okay. I think he's all right. I think he has a lot of potential. But I don't think they did the best job writing him and stuff in the first movie. So we'll see what happens with him. But I thought they showed a lot of cool characters that we hadn't seen in previous installments of Mortal Kombat, and I thought they were cool to see. And they obviously had like really awesome actors in there, like Hiroyuki Sanada's in there as Scorpion. He's the main character of Shogun.
Oh, okay.
He's in John Wick 4.
Yeah. I like that guy. He's cool.
He's just badass. Like he plays Scorpion.
Got it.
He's like the most popular Mortal Kombat character.
Cool.
And then you know you've got they're in. So the second one that's coming out is it's apparently gonna have what's his face from The Boys. Just slipped my mind. Who
Which
plays
character?
Billy Butcher.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
He was in the Lord of the Rings too.
Yeah.
He's cool. He's gonna be in Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, he's gonna be like the
Interesting.
funny like Hollywood
I can
fighter guy.
see that, yeah.
And I'm so stoked because
Yeah.
I love his acting.
Mhm.
And I'm so excited to see the next movie. So
Nice.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah. But do you feel like it's like, is it still kind of cheesy? Like, is there a plot line, or is it just kind of what?
The plot line is there's a tournament of like champions that happens. And if one realm defeats another realm 10 times in a row in Mortal Kombat, they overtake the realm.
I see.
And every Mortal Kombat game or whatever, it's always the last Mortal Kombat before Earth loses. So it's like it always gives Earth an incentive to like it brings out all the best fighters from Earth and then they like win basically.
Got it.
So not all the time, but in most of them. So there's alternate like timelines that they've done. The latest one, the movie that or game that came out, Mortal Kombat 1, they like rewrote a bunch of the characters. Like they changed who was like the god of the earth and like all this other stuff. So I haven't gotten around to playing it yet, but I hope I can at some point.
Yeah, I don't have a huge legacy with Mortal Kombat. I played like the one on whatever one was on Super Nintendo, and then whatever
We
one.
played one together. We played 10
Yeah,
together. That one's
10.
pretty
That
fun.
was the last one I played.
Yeah, we got to have you watch that.
Yeah, I'll watch it eventually. I'm down for that. All right, let's talk about some like speculation and just like not even speculation, just like what genre or what games do we think would make good video game adaptations? So, what's one off the top of your head that you think is like would be really cool?
I've talked about this game before, but Heavy Rain.
Yeah,
on the PS3, and that was the one with the origami killer.
Yeah.
I think it'd make such a cool like movie. It could be like a mini series. I don't know if it'd be like a series, but it could be a mini series, or it could be a movie. I think it'd do fine.
But
either.
let me ask you this, because this is kind of similar to what we were talking about with Fallout, where, and also kind of what we were talking about with Last of Us, because I feel like Heavy Rain is a game where it's a very cinematic type of game. But as far as I know, your choices do dictate how story stuff plays out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, do you feel if a producer kind of decided, oh, I want the guy to do this, this, and this, if it's going to kind of ruin the experience for you in terms of the storyline?
Not if the character does a balance of things, I think is fine. Because I think in the game, you're more likely, you're likely to make mistakes throughout that, cost you something, but you're also likely to make good decisions too. So I think if there's a balance of good and bad decisions from the character that also showcase the character's morality in certain situations, I think that's totally fine.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the character kind of falling and then getting back up, falling, getting back up until he kind of, at the end of the day, there's a specific plot. And I think if the writer can just kind of get them there, no matter like if it's, A or B, whatever it might be, I'm down for the ride.
Yeah. It's just, do you think with a game like that too, do you feel like do you feel like you're going to watch it and be like, I've already seen this before? Because that's kind of how I felt like with The Last of Us.
Well, I'll know the plot.
Yeah.
So that'll maybe, but I'll also be excited to watch it unfold again. I haven't played in a while, and I'd be interested to see like my friend's opinions or Amanda's opinion on it. Just to,
I guess
she
that's
loves true crime.
What I'm trying to say though is like that game had a very specific plot line with there's got to be the specific enemy or bad guy or whatever. Whereas in Fallout, because there's a whole franchise to pull source material from, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, it's like all of these characters, they made up the characters, but they're like in the world of Fallout, right?
Right.
So it's kind of like they could develop their own plot line. There's no restrictions on like, oh, this guy has to be the bad guy, this guy has to be the good guy, this is what they need to do. Whereas again, like in The Last of Us, it's like the show ended exactly the way the game ended, more or less. It's like we already knew it was still cool to watch it in live action form, but to a certain extent, it almost felt like unnecessary. Like there's other games.
I don't think so. I love watching the actors bring the characters out. So I mean, Pedro Pascal, incredible performance. I love like the acting aspect of it. So I think the
game itself already had good acting.
Yes,
that was
and no.
the thing. Yeah.
Yes and no. Obviously it was mocapped, and the characters were talking and over it, and it's just still not like the real thing.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So having a real actor kind of bring it to life is different in my opinion. It's also feels more real because it's like see real people in real environment, not real environments, semi-real environments.
Yeah. Green screen environments
right,
that look
right.
real.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
All right, let's talk about a big one that again, it's a rumors thing, but I feel like I've seen that there's been confirmation that they're at least working on some sort of Zelda adaptation.
Right.
Okay. Do you think a Zelda adaptation should be like the Mario movie where it's completely 3D, or should it be live action? Let's start there. In your perfect world,
should it be 3D or should it be live action?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough, right?
It is tough. I'm I think I'm gonna go with 3D
Mm.
because first of all, Link's a silent protagonist.
Do you want him to be a silent protagonist in the
No, I
movie?
don't.
Yeah.
I don't want him to be a silent protagonist because I don't want to watch a silent protagonist in a movie. It's lame in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I
you
agree.
know, it's lame. So they'll have to do something for that. Whether it's a character that just talks a little bit like Master Chief from Halo, or
Was
something
he?
like
Oh,
that.
that's another one really quick. Like, was it? Did he not talk a lot in the show as well?
He talked more. He talked more than he does in the games,
Okay.
for sure. And I think that's he talks more, I believe, in the books and stuff, but in the games he doesn't talk very much at all.
Gotcha.
So
It's another franchise I'm not super
yeah.
familiar with.
But yeah, he'd have to talk, and there's a lot of creatures and stuff in the Zelda universe, and you know, it'd be kind of weird to see them in you know, in like a live action, but it could also be really cool.
Yeah.
Like a Deku Baba, or you know, what's like some other, like a Dark Nut or something.
Yeah.
Could be cool. All kinds of interesting enemies that we could see. But also, how do the other characters kind of play into it too? Like,
I know.
what's the plot? Like, is there like a love interest with like Zelda, or like the farm girl?
It
or
feels
something?
like if they went 3D, inherently they need. I don't know. I could be wrong. Inherently they need to go a little more generic, kind of like the Mario movie. Like I actually loved that movie.
The Mario movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
and we're
amazing.
not talking about the live action one. We watched that together.
We
right?
watched that. Yeah.
That was so freaking weird, dude.
Yeah.
Well, if you haven't seen that, go watch
But
the,
then again,
the
it was
live action Mario movie.
Yeah. Then again, it was entertaining too.
It was entertaining, but it was really freaking weird. But yeah, the Mario 3D movie, it didn't have a ton of substance, but I still like adored it just because that was a franchise I grew up with. So I feel like if they did a 3D Zelda movie, I feel like that's probably the direction they would just kind of go in. Is like, it's more flashy and cool, and like it appeals to the kids, and as adults would be like, oh, that was fun, but it wasn't deep. I feel like if they went live action, they'd kind of need to go a little bit like, it's like, how do you make the world of Zelda not kind of dark? It's kind of a messed up universe, you know? So I don't know. I'm kind of torn as well. Like, I think visually it would look really beautiful as a 3D animation, but in my head, I can't even picture it, if I'm being totally honest. But I think it could be really cool if they did a live action. I'm just imagining, like, what would Link's outfit look like? They'd probably go ham on, like, design and, like...
I'd like to see, like, the Twilight Princess style.
Yes.
I think that could be more realistic.
Yeah, like on his
real,
skirt, there's like, you know, sewn like filigree, and just like he's got like kind of some chainmail and stuff like that. I think that's more what I would appreciate as an adult, is more the set design and the outfits and stuff like that.
Yeah, like I'm a huge Ocarina of Time fan. That's my favorite one, but I don't think I could see him in like the Ocarina of Time outfit for a movie.
Unless they went with a younger kid. Like, how cool would that actually be in a movie if they had two main actors, a young actor and an adult,
and he
you
goes
know?
back and forth in time.
Yeah.
Could be cool.
That would be really cool, actually.
We're getting somewhere. But
Yeah.
this is the same thing with Zelda that we talked about before when we talked about Ganondorf. Like, he just is not like that interesting of a character. Aside from his design. No, Ganondorf.
Oh, yeah.
There's no motive. I mean, like, Link just wakes up and
Like,
he
I have
has
to
a
defeat
fairy,
the
or
bad
somebody
guy.
tells him, yeah, like, you are, you know, the chosen hero, and you need to go find the Master Sword and all this stuff, right? And I think if there were to be a movie, there'd need to be some kind of like darkness that occurs, and maybe he loses his family and or something like that, and he kind of has a purpose to rise up, but as he's progressing he realizes that his purpose is greater, type of thing. So I could be on board with that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I would agree. I think that I think just having some, I feel like that's what they've been doing a lot with these adaptations, is like they kind of just add this like extra little bit of lore when they feel like it's missing, to kind of, like, for example, I guess in the Mario movie, it was like Mario's from like a New York City kind of place, and then he gets transported into the Mushroom Kingdom. That was kind of like the back lore to then spoilers if you haven't seen the Mario movie, the children's movie, but you know, they kind of allude to the fact that Peach also doesn't come from the Mushroom Kingdom, so that was kind of like the plot twist, right? Which was kind of cool, which obviously wasn't in the games to begin with. So yeah, I think they would have to do something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one adaptation that I gotta just like bring up to you. I have to do this because I know you haven't heard of this, but and it's a Red Essence podcast, so we have to talk about Final Fantasy briefly. But okay, so
Final Fantasy, the ancient pizza.
No, it's pizza. Yeah. You realize you say pizza every single podcast. I've been cutting this out, guys, but Armand sits down and he just says pizza, and then we just started.
Pizza with pepperoni, mozzarella.
Rao's
ultimate homemade pepperoni pizza with garlic seasoning and oregano.
Okay, so if I showed you this,
and sourdough bread. Go ahead.
If I showed you this screenshot, would you think this is from a Final Fantasy movie?
This looks like what's that one with the Andromeda?
Mass Effect.
Mass Effect. This looks like Mass Effect.
Yeah, exactly, dude. So this is something. As far as I know, in terms of like history, I think this movie is what caused Squaresoft to merge with Enix, which was Dragon Quest, to become Square Enix.
Why did this movie cause
this
that?
movie bombed so freaking hard. They put so many millions of dollars into this movie because this was when they were making Kingdom Hearts, they were making FF10, and then they were making this movie at the same time, like three massive things. And I think this movie just went so poorly that I think they kind of consolidated with Enix, which I also think was maybe not doing super hot at the time. And
who made this though? Was it Square or Enix?
Square, because it's Final Fantasy.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know if they were Square Enix yet, but it was Square Soft previously. Right. But what was so weird about this movie was it was like I gotta rewatch it just to see, but it was like there was no
spirits.
It was just like not Final Fantasy at all, dude. It was so freaking weird. It was like a sci-fi drama. You want to hear the weirdest voice actor that was in this freaking movie?
Who?
What's his name? Alec Baldwin.
Really?
Was in this movie.
That's so random.
Yeah, it's so random, dude. So yeah, this is one of those adaptations. This is like an early 2000s
looks like a Resident Evil, potentially Resident Evil.
I know.
Wait, is that part from it?
Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. Yeah, I guess so. I don't remember. I saw this probably in 2001 when this came out. So
are those monsters on the planet? Is that what it is?
I think so. I honestly don't remember. This is also kind of around when like The Matrix was out, so you can kind of see those sorts of influences. It's like everybody was riding around in a ship and there was like tentacles and, you know, people in like tight leathery outfits, you know, that kind of thing. So
I like that. It just says fantasy.
Yeah. No, the final is with the characters' faces in it, you know.
Yeah.
Music composed by Elliot
Goldenfall.
Yeah, you know, Elliot Golden.
Yeah, he's my friend.
So yeah, I had to bring that one up because that's super weird. Anyone in the comments, let me know if you've seen that movie and if you thought it was good. I assume nobody thought that movie was good, but yeah. So that was an interesting one.
What about Dragon Age? Could you see Dragon Age being a movie? And
I actually think that would be a really cool, maybe not a movie. I think it's kind of what you were saying too. There needs to be time to develop these characters in a lot of these games. And obviously there are movies that have done this well where you can develop a character over 2.5 hours. But I feel like because there's so much lore in Dragon Age specifically, it would be more conducive to a show.
Yeah, like I think when I think of Dragon Age, I think of the Witcher show because there's
Yeah.
elves in there, and they did a really good job of designing the elves in the Witcher.
Mm-hmm.
It really reminded me of Dragon Age, and I think if they kind of followed that path of the Witcher
Mm.
with like the elves and stuff, I think they could really do a good job with a Dragon Age show. In
Mm-hmm.
my opinion, I think they could really incorporate all kinds of things because they have like the Templars and the mages, and
Yeah,
they could literally do like a Game of Thrones style thing with
I agree.
Dragon Age franchise because they have the blood mages
Mm-hmm.
and the fade and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and there's just so much to explore
Yeah.
in the Dragon Age universe. So
Yeah, I agree. I think too, it's like got a very D&D vibe. Oh, did you see the Dungeons and Dragons movie, by the way?
I did. Wait,
I didn't see it. It literally just came out like what, last year or something like that.
I think we saw it. Yeah.
You like it?
I think it was. Can you pull it up? Just so I can see
Yeah,
what the
it had
cast
what's
was,
his
'cause I-
name? Was it Chris Parnell? Was that? Yeah.
Oh yeah, this movie's actually really good.
Was it?
Yeah, I was surprised.
I heard it was decent. I haven't gotten to see it yet.
No, it was good. Yeah, it's one of those things where the main character, he's a bard, and he's literally
that's
useless.
that's
All he
funny.
does is just like talk, and he gets
Ah,
out of like situations somehow.
that's funny.
So that's kind of like the comedy part. And yeah, Honor Among Thieves.
I heard this was a little bit more silly than
Yeah,
serious, right?
yeah,
But I feel like Dragon Age is very serious, at least for the most part.
it's pretty serious.
Yeah. So I don't know how
There's
they
a lot of
would
dark stuff.
necessarily pull that off, but I think that yeah, I think I honestly think of any franchise that would be a really sick one. Especially again, this is another one I got to see. You guys watched the Lord of the Rings show, right? On Amazon?
Uh,
The Rings of
no.
Power? Oh, you didn't see that?
Mm-mm.
Okay. It's like I feel like they've been going really hardcore with these like and like The Witcher, right? Like
Mhm.
these really intricate like fantasy shows, and Dragon Age is just so badass. So I
Mhm.
think that could be really cool.
Yeah, they'd have to be pretty careful with things, but
What do you think about this is another one that's been basically confirmed is Metal Gear movie with Oscar Isaac as
Mm.
a Snake.
I love Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
I mean, guy's just such a amazing actor.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited to see him play Snake. I think it's about time. I think
Yeah.
the gamers have been waiting for a Metal Gear movie for a while, and I
Yeah.
think it's going to be really cool, especially because Kojima's involved.
Is
And,
he?
Well, I'm assuming because it's. Oh,
Well, I don't
guess
know
not. I guess
because he's not a part of
You're right.
Konami anymore.
You're right.
So that's what might
Well,
be
hey,
kind
I
of
guess-
weird about it.
Okay, so yeah, you're right. So, but I guess he wrote the initial source material, so
Mhm.
there is still he's still in it in a way, like it's
Sure,
still
his like essence.
his
or whatever.
essence is
Yeah,
in
yeah.
it. So, I think they did a really good job with making the characters and the world feel very weird.
Mm-hmm.
And the a lot of the bosses and enemies, they were like supernatural.
Yeah.
And they really
That
kind of
was my favorite part about
loop.
Metal Gear, honestly,
Yeah.
is because the whole game felt so realistic, and then you get these like really wild antagonists, and you're like, how are they able to fly?
Yeah,
Why is this guy a vampire?
Yeah.
You know?
yeah.
How can this guy shoot so perfectly? You know?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot they could do. I really think the stealth thing can get boring after a while if they don't do it right.
Mm.
So I think they need to pick and choose when they use the stealth and when they just go in and.
What could be kind of cool though is in a Metal Gear movie, kind of make him more like a James Bond, right? With like gadgets and stuff like that.
Mm.
Like particularly Metal Gear Solid 4, it was so cool. And 3 kind of had a thing like this where it's like, well, in 4 his suit literally changes when he like touches walls and stuff.
Yeah, I love that.
Remember
one.
that?
Yeah,
That was
That
sick.
was my favorite. Yeah.
And then in 3, it was like you could swap out your camo shirt to
Mhm.
blend in with the grass better.
I think in 3-2 it was more about survival.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they could take that angle too. Like he's
Yeah.
in the woods and he's like literally eating snakes.
Yeah.
And to try and survive, and he's got his like cigarette that he smokes.
Yeah.
and he just like takes out like I don't know a bear and like a bunch of like guards, and he rolls over and just starts smoking his cigarette. It's like, yeah, that's Metal Gear right there.
And then a vampire like flies out of a bunker or something, and then he's got a
and then he gets his radio. He's like Otacon. So I think I'm pretty stoked. I hope they don't stray too much, but
I think too actually what could be interesting about a Metal Gear movie in terms of a budget and quality, what we're kind of talking about. So like a Dragon Age show would be so expensive to produce because it's kind of like everything needs to be like uniquely built. Like there's tons of warriors and mages. They have to have like crazy costumes and stuff. In a Metal Gear movie, it's kind of like, obviously there's still costume design, but it's not like metal armors and, you know, they're not in like mystical forests with like crystals or whatever.
They'll have to make the Metal Gears though.
Yeah, but I guess that's what I'm saying is like there's specific things that they can put a lot of budget into. So when those moments happen, they're much more impactful instead of like kind of stretching your budget thin. I feel like we've seen a lot of that with like Marvel movies recently where it's like every single shot has CG in it. So it's like there's obviously sacrifices that need to be made. And you're kind of watching certain things. You're like, this looks like it's from 2006, you know? So that could be interesting about a Metal Gear. I think that's kind of like, well, I guess Dune had a lot of CG too, but it felt like they were very careful about when they went hardcore with a very CG heavy shot, right? And they just made it perfect.
Dude, Dune was so good.
Yeah.
Have you seen the second one yet?
No.
Oh man.
No. With a baby, it's hard to go see movies.
It was one of the best movies I've ever seen.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's not. Wait, who? No, it's not the same director. I feel like if the director of Dune did the Metal Gear movie, that would be like the ultimate movie. That would be so sick. Yeah, I can imagine because the whole thing with the Metal Gear series is it's very what's the word?
Yeah, cinematic.
Cinematic. Yeah. So
and Oscar Isaac's in Dune too.
Yeah, I think that's what I was kind of thinking about.
So.
Okay, let's take a look at a couple more.
Okay.
So so we have some like kind of weird ones that we were thinking about, like Dragon Quest. That's another one. It's kind of like Final Fantasy. And obviously they've had, besides the Spirits Within, they've had other tie-in Final Fantasy movies like Advent Children, as well as there was a movie that they what was it called? For FF15. Did you see that one? It was basically a prequel to the game, which was actually really cool. Funny story, that was actually a really cool experience. Me and Rafi actually drove out to New York because they were playing it in a theater. Oh. So we got to go see a Final Fantasy movie in a movie theater. It was like the coolest experience. But those were like 3D, like highly detailed movies. But like Dragon Quest is another, JRPG franchise. Could you see that being made into a
it's already been a 3D adaptation, but
I guess what would a Dragon Quest live action movie look like?
Man, it'd be weird. It'd be one of those things again where they'd have to get the monsters right. There's so many monsters in the universe. They'd have to, get those looking right. And
do you think there's a world in which
it would
they
be that interesting, honestly?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
A lot of the Dragon Quest games have very generic plot line. They do have like interesting scenarios where they do things, and they'd really just have to do a good job with all the independent scenarios from like village to village. And I really think they should capitalize on like the whole party class system thing. I think that would interest people. That's at least hardcore gamers like me.
Yeah, I think that's, I guess what it brings it back to is like there's got to be either an essence or a mechanic from the game that would make an interesting movie. So like for example, the most recent Tomb Raider movie, and also did you see the Uncharted movie? That was another one that came out.
We've been wanting to watch it.
You guys should watch it. I think you'd like it. Honestly, that was one I was like really surprised with. It felt, again, it's like kind of a popcorn flick, you're not going to walk away like with your mind blown, but it was a good movie. And it's like both Uncharted and Tomb Raider are, they stem from Indiana Jones, but it's like that sort of adventurer. I'm finding maps and puzzles, so that's kind of the mechanic, let's call it, that they can then tie into the rest of the movie. So it's like they'll find cool keys that they can put in and like open crazy doors. They like solve weird riddles, or like there's a light puzzle, you know, one of those kinds of things. So I think that's sometimes what makes cool game adaptation movies, is because they're able to integrate those gameplay mechanics into a movie. With an RPG, it's like, because in the first place, the person is trying to make themselves the character. It's kind of hard to then be like, okay, what is like the actual mechanic, the overarching mechanic or gist that won't make it more like
separates it apart from other things,
other fantasy things, right? Because like on the surface level, it's like Dragon Quest is like Final Fantasy or like Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. But what makes Dragon Quest is the silly looking monsters and kind of the funny characters and the
they'd probably need to have some humor in it. Yeah. Like in 8, they have like the oi guff.
Yeah.
They'd have to capitalize
with the like
on that
green
guy.
spiky hat. Is that who you're talking about? He's got the vest on.
Yeah. And then they'd have to have the chick.
Yeah.
And the main character's kind of like a little like dumb type of thing. Or maybe he's
silent protagonist, dude.
Oh God, no! Please don't do that.
All right. So I think the ultimate video game adaptation movie would have to be Pikmin.
For sure.
How would they do a Pikmin movie?
Man, that
it would have to be live action, right?
It'd have to be live action for sure. I mean, they'd have to pick some interesting people to play Olimar and his crew, and
he'd have to have a huge nose.
Yeah. And maybe on the shorter end, and then crash land him on a planet, and he's kind of, there's maybe a bit of horror in it. Like, at night he sees like creatures and stuff like that.
Yeah, and there's just Pikmin dying left and right.
And he's like, "What's that noise? Like, what is that weird noise I keep hearing at night?" And then all of a sudden one day he's about to get eaten by a monster, and he trips over a Pikmin that pops out of the ground.
Yeah,
and the Pikmin like beats up the monster. And he's like, "Whoa, what was that?"
But then there's the scene where he loses his very first Pikmin. Yeah. And it's like really sad. He's holding the dying Pikmin in his arms, and it's like really cute, and he's crying and stuff.
And he's writing in his journal like, "I met this creature today," and
we go on. All right, I think, guys, that's a good point to wrap it up. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, we put these out every Friday, so subscribe so you can get notified when they go out, and also be sure to check out Traveler's Refrain on Steam and Wishlist. We would really, really appreciate that. So yeah, guys, until next time, see you later.
Take care.
Bye.